One thing that's interesting to me, we were talking about the whole issue of digital transformation in retail. Everybody talks about Amazon, Alibaba, and yet they're building physical stores. So what's with that? I mean, if physical is dead, why are they building a store?
Well, they're building because, one, physical is not dead. They find it easier because they deal with digitization all the time to create stores that have digital workplaces in them. Versus somebody who starts as a brick and mortar, they've never thought of digital, or they thought that is, well, we need to sell through that channel. They don't realize it impacts how they process information, how efficient they are, other ways of doing it. So what happens is Amazon is doing Amazon Go. They also are going to apply it to Whole Foods as that comes in. Alibaba is building a whole shopping center.
Well, they bought Whole Foods, right? Talk about a bet. That's a huge investment.
But that's what they do. They did the Bezos test. They found some of these ideas work. The idea that you don't have to check out at a checkout stand. You just walk out and you get billed on it. That cuts the friction out of that makes the experience a lot better. Once they've done it, then they need a platform to roll it out. And when they talk about developing 2,000 Amazon Go's, a better way might be to take Whole Foods, that already has thousands of units, already has an established clientele, has all the retail rollout, and just insinuate these together. So ultimately it's because they don't recognize it as omni-channel customer. They don't recognize what they're trying to do. They see digital as a tool, or they see digital as a channel, or they see digital as a threat. And all of those inhibit companies going out there. Alibaba, Amazon, and others are going, wow.
What's Alibaba doing? I mean, here we're in the U.S. People tend to talk about Amazon.
Sure.
The reality is, you talk about Alibaba is of a similar magnitude.
It is.
So what are they doing in terms of plays, and how is it different than Amazon's, and what can we learn from them?
Well, they're a bit ahead of the market in terms of building a whole shopping center around digital. It's a lot easier if the whole shopping
What's
center...
What's the digital shopping center look like?
First of all, it's an ecosystem that all ties together. The buildings are all tied together. And if you build it from ground up with all of the network in there, if you build it up in terms of the Wi-Fi, if you build it up in terms of wayfinding when you go in, when you go online, if you want to, it can do suggestive selling to us. When you go into a shopping center right now, the old theory was keep them locked in here as long as they can. We'll give them food. Not great food, just food so they don't leave, and we'll have them wander, and while they're wandering, they'll stumble across something. But in today's world, time-starved world, some people want to do that, but some people don't. What you can do is have a touch screen up there. You can touch, I want this, I want that. They can wayfind for you. Secondarily, they can not only show you the route there, they can do suggestive selling. Well, if you're interested in this, here's some other things that you have. Now that means that you don't just rely on the vendors, Abercrombie and Fitch next to American Eagle, next to Hollister, next to North Face, next to somebody else. You actually have to coordinate with them. So suddenly the owners have to be partners.
Mm-hmm.
One of the
That's an interesting thing to do, because a lot of them are very competitive, right?
Oh, sure.
And they have overlapping product lines, and you say, oh, let's just all collaborate.
Yeah. Well, I'm a believer, and this is simplistic. Read in the Harvard Business Review, and it was the most simplistic explanation, but because it appealed to me, and it was a description of the difference between the pie slicers and the pie enlargers. And the pie slicers are the Malthusian thinkers who basically say, the world is finite. What we're going to sell is finite. So what I get, I have to take from you, or conversely, what you get, you're stealing from me. The pie enlargers are the people that say, through some technologies, through some breakthroughs, through some new ideas and product, we'll all get larger because we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And a shopping center developed by a traditional shopping center person is pretty Malthusian in its thinking. They want to get the people in. One that's being developed by Alibaba is one that's saying, listen, if we create this whole experiential activity with everything in it, we are going to increase the purchases overall.
So, you teach now, means you deal with students. When I ask you, geez, Hap, I'm looking for, where I should be going in life, what things I should go do, what's your advice? And if you were their age again, what would you be doing?
Well,
okay, the part you can share, the part that you can share.
First of all, you have to realize that you're never going to have a job for life.
Yeah.
Don't look to a company to be a lifetime job. You're going to move from place to place. You're going to move either because of your interest or the company's not there or technology is coming through. So look at some place that allows you to learn, allows you to do what you're doing. The second of all, look for something which is disruptive. By 2030, 3/4 of the jobs that existed in 2010 are going to be gone. They're going to be gone not because of immigration, all those stupid things.
Yeah.
They're going to be gone because of automation. They're going to be gone because of the big trends of digitization, democratization, and globalization.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, don't look for a lifetime job. Look at a company that's disrupting, either through one of those individually
Right.
or all of those combined. That will put you on the leading edge of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If you are just taking a company that exists, and let's think about Kodak. Kodak in 1998 had 170,000 employees, highly profitable, and they frankly had most of the major digital photography patents.
Right.
But they were making so much money on photo processing that they just stayed with that business. That's not the business you want to join. You want to
Right.
join the new ones, the ones that are out there. And these companies don't have to be small. They can certainly be the unicorns of the world, the billion-dollar valuation private companies. And don't worry about whether or not they're going to dominate the world or not, just whether or not they're actually going to disrupt. Because if they're going to disrupt, either that company is going to capitalize on the opportunity, or if you're at the nexus, you'll see the opportunity and you go start your own company and say, listen, they're missing that.
Yeah.
If they had just taken this technology to that level, that's where the opportunities are going to be. And you're going to constantly, this is my professor's hat on, you're going to have to constantly go back for education. Education is not going to be
One and done.
one and done. It doesn't work that way. And if you only did it to get that reputation on your CV, then that's good. But it's only good for the reputation, because the half-life of most of our knowledge is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So what you really have to recognize is technologies are coming up, ways of approaching business are coming up, whether it's design thinking or whether it's agile software development, or all of these things are, and more are going to happen. So what you have to realize is simultaneously with taking a job, you're going to have to commit to educating. If your company that you're going into believes that, and they will help you do that either economically or through innovation labs or experiential activities, now you're with the right one.
Right.
Now, there's lots of fields that are going out there. I'm predisposed towards retail, and I'm predisposed towards things like sport and sport activity. But I'm working on one company. It's nanotechnology. I'm the board of a nanotechnology company that works with fabrics and uses nanotechnology to change the functional performance. I'm on the board of another company, and it's doing data visualization and digital marketing and basically changing things. The commonality is disruption.
Right.
Because disruption plays out the same way across industries.
And then, kind of building on that theme, you're also on the boards, right? And so boards have the opposite challenge sometimes, as you've got an established business.
Right.
How are you, when you're giving advice to boards, how should they be thinking about it if you've got an established company that's looking at disruptions? Because there are famous cases that people have transcended multiple disruptions, but often people feel very threatened that you can kind of go into a defensive crouch and freeze.
Right.
So how do you come out and win as opposed to just get trapped in your past?
Well, you never directly attack what's being done, because that never wins. All it gets is defensiveness. So I usually try to use some examples, some metaphors, some other industries of what's happening, and not necessarily a direct threat, but how have things evolved and why have they evolved that way, and what are we doing to be able to anticipate something like that and make it almost an exercise, intellectual exercise without an emotional exercise. But I view one of my roles on the boards where I serve, and I'm not talking about startups. Startup, your roles are kind of different, and oftentimes you're in. But as you get larger, it's more governance and guidance and direction. And my role is to be the person who says the emperor doesn't have clothes, to challenge it in a way that isn't necessarily off-putting to the individual, but challenges the status quo. Because the only constant we have is change. And the rate of change of society is increasing exponentially. It's not linear. 95% of all patents ever issued were issued in the last 5 years. Not all great patents, of course, but that shows you the pace of things that's happening. So you've just got to commit to that change, even if you're going to fail. So what I add on top of that is my story about all the people who failed and it didn't ruin their company. Steve Jobs, he got kicked out. Mark Andreessen, he started Netscape, but then he was kicked out of there, but then he now has a very, very successful venture capital firm. You look at Max Levchin, he and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel started PayPal. They too were out of there. But that isn't the end of the world.
Right.
And if you're trying to not fail in an exponentially changing world, you're probably going to fail.
Right.
What you have to say is it's all right to test. It's all right to try something. It's essential to try something, bound what the risk is. And so ask somebody, and I can think of one place where I was on a board and they didn't ignore my advice, but I said, are we aware of the risk of the change?
Right.
I'm totally embracing the change. Have we assessed the risk? What is it in terms of cash flow? What is it in terms of what we're doing? And frankly, they were so convinced they were doing the right thing that they didn't think there was any particular reason to assess the risk. They should have.
Lesson learned.
Yeah.
So, are there any things I didn't ask you that you think that we should cover?
Well, there are a million things because I enjoy talking, and you do too. But I think the major thing is about whether you fear the future or whether you embrace the future, whether you fear change, as I alluded to, or whether you accept that and see that as opportunity. And a lot of people where I went to school were very academic and very brilliant, and they knew all the reasons something wouldn't work, to the point that they were almost paralyzed. Brilliantly paralyzed, and in a conversation they could nail me with the 5 reasons why something doesn't work. But there's a quote which I love from Goethe, the German philosopher, that basically said, "Whatever you can do or believe you can, begin it."
Yes.
Because beginnings have genius and power and magic in it, and that's really what Should we sit and figure it all out while the world goes on, or should we be the one that jumps out there?
There's a lot, you just have to go out and do it. You can't think it through. You have to have a framework and have some thought about it, but engage, and in the process of engaging, learn to actually create the final thing.
Right, and you will pivot based on
it's never all, I told you, Yogi Berra's great quote, right? That, predictions are hard, especially about the future.
Right, yeah. But the only way you get some of that great input is actually going out and doing, and then realizing, oh my gosh, on paper that was great, but it just isn't going to work here, or we don't have time for it to work. I thought this was going to roll out in a year, and this is a 10-year project, and I don't have 10 years, so let's go somewhere else.
Well, look, thank you very much.
Thanks,
As always,
always great.
Always fun. Thank you.
Thanks.